Hey everybody, Jamie Stokes from Real Page Frank here. I'm doing a quick video and wanted to discuss a few things. The cost of living and the cost of housing here in Canada. So I'm going to make a prediction here. I see there's a lot of people who are selling their houses because they're being forced to. The cost of living is just, it's too much. You know, with the interest rates rising as they have, people's mortgages in some cases are doubling, and people really didn't account for that. So here we are. People bought houses at the peak of the housing market, which, you know, I think anybody who takes satisfaction in seeing people suffer when it comes to, you know, buying a big house and not being able to continue making payments for it. They did qualify at the time, but circumstances have changed. You know, the cost of food, utilities, everything when it comes to living has really skyrocketed. You know, mortgage payments alone are double, which a lot of people were kind of tapped out when they bought their houses. They bought, you know, the maximum that they could afford is what they did. They went out and they bought large houses, and now that the mortgage rates have gone up, they can't afford to continue making payments because they've doubled. In the future, not so distant future, in my opinion, unless something changes, there's going to be a lot more people that are going to be forced to sell their houses. Right now, people are living off of debt, you know, lines of credit or credit cards, whatever the case may be, in order to continue making their payments and survive as best they can. And there's a lot of people in these situations. Now, I had a chat with some lawyers, and they really recommended that agents do their due diligence and make sure that there's actually equity in the home prior to taking on a new listing. So verify their mortgages and make sure that there's money there so that they can afford to close on the houses that they're selling. Now this, for lawyers to have to mention this specifically, it seems pretty crazy. I mean, we should be doing this anyways. I've heard cases where people have sold, agents have sold houses, and there wasn't enough money left over for closing costs or to pay the realtor, whatever the case may be. So in the future, there's going to be a lot more people losing their houses, in my opinion. Like I said, unless something changes. I don't know if the government's got a plan up their sleeve, but I doubt that's the case. So they're going to be people losing their houses. Landlords are starting to sell a lot of their income properties if it doesn't make financial sense. I know tenants out there are angry, feeling that they're being ripped off by landlords, but tenants also aren't looking at the cost of mortgages. You know, for some reason, a lot of tenants, they don't understand how it works, and they seem to think that, you know, the landlord's paying, you know, a $500,000, $600,000, $700,000, $800,000 house. You know, for $1 million house, the mortgage is, you know, I'm not a mortgage person, so I usually stay in my lane, but I'm gonna guess and say, you know, between $6,000 and $7,000, something like this. And that house you'll only be able to rent out for maybe half of that. So, I mean, it doesn't make much financial sense for landlords to continue making payments at a loss of several $1,000s per month in order to keep that property. They bought the property as a long-term investment, and it's not, right now in this current market, it's not turning out to be that way. They'd have to have a pretty stable and significant job in order to throw away several $1,000s. I mean, it still is a long-term investment, but that's an expensive investment. So there's going to be more landlords getting out of the game. I know there already is, which is going to create a housing shortage. So one thing that I have, that I'm thinking of here, is if landlords can't afford to keep their rental places, there's going to be a mass shortage on rentals for your average tenants. And then on top of that, if the mortgage rates continue to go, or if people run out of credit to continue paying their mortgages, you're going to have people who are being financially forced to sell their houses because they can't make the mortgage payments on them. So not only will tenants be looking for new properties, landlords at some point may end up having to sell their houses and become tenants with the way things are going, because I know, I can see it. People are not able to continue making their payments, and they've got other debts, maybe car loans or lines of credit or credit cards. Credit card debt is absolutely killer. So I see in the future here, there's going to be a huge problem when it comes to finding rentals. I mean, it's very tough as it is. Landlords only want AAA tenants, and the government kind of fumbled that up by making it so difficult for landlords to be able to evict bad tenants. The Tenant Landlord Board and Tenant Landlord Board, they're swamped. I mean, they can't keep up with the caseloads that they have, and there's constantly more being added to their caseload. So I've heard of people with cases coming up, while hearings coming up in 9-10 months and things like this, which is absurd, because tenants in the meantime won't be paying rent. They may be damaging the property or whatever. And I'm not harping on tenants, because at some point everybody, for the most part, is a tenant, and not all tenants are bad. I've seen bad tenants. I've seen excellent tenants. I can probably say that I've seen just as many good tenants as I've seen bad. So I mean, it's pretty balanced out there. I think I can't say that I've seen more worse tenants than I've seen good ones, or more good ones than I've seen bad tenants. But I think we're going to get a shortage coming up of tenants or properties for tenants in the future, because landlords may end up selling their primary residence and their rental residences as well, just to be able to keep afloat, because the mortgage payments are crazy. I mean, the amount that you need to put down 20% on $1 million house. There's $200,000. Like, I don't know many people who have 200 grand sitting around, but in order to be able to get and buy a house here in Canada now, especially in the GTA, like, I wouldn't even, with the cost of things, I wouldn't even want to buy a house in the GTA for the most part. And I know that sounds bad. It makes sense if you make good money and you work locally. I mean, obviously you're going to buy a house in the GTA, but if you don't have to, if you work remotely, or you have a job where you can travel or something like this, a lot of people are moving outside of the GTA. A lot of people are moving out of Ontario. There's also a mass exodus of people, the highest numbers we've ever seen here in Canada, of Canadians exiting Canada, just because the cost of living is so expensive. I mean, other countries do have very high inflation, very high inflation, much more than Canada. But we're not really used to this. A lot of people are not used to it in other countries as well, and it's causing real financial hardship for a lot of people. So I can see things getting worse here in the future if there's not something implemented to ease the financial strain on people. It is too much. I mean, the utilities are crazy. The cost of food is crazy. Insurance, gas, everything is just, it's too much. And you can see it on a lot of online videos. Canadians are speaking out, and they're saying, like, they can't afford to live here anymore. They don't know what to do. It's too expensive. So I think this tells you, obviously housing is one of our absolute biggest costs. It's gone up significantly, and people can't afford to live, and they're kind of tapped out. They really genuinely don't know what to do. There's no government programs to help people out. At the same, nothing worth mentioning. So people are kind of stuck, and there's going to be a lot. I think there's going to be, in the very near future, there's going to be a lot more houses coming on the market. There already are. There's a lot of landlords that are selling off their rental properties because it doesn't make financial sense for them to do that, and a lot of them are having struggles with tenants who refuse to leave, saying that just because they are selling their house doesn't mean that the tenant has to leave or whatever. It is more difficult to sell a property when it's tenanted, because the new landlord doesn't know anything about the tenants really. I mean, sure, you can see the lease or whatever, but even if they're good tenants, I mean, typically when people buy a house, they want to move into the house themselves. So that makes things a lot more difficult for people selling their house. Um, I, the market it's really bad. I don't follow, I've said this before in my videos, I don't follow statistics that much when it comes to, houses sold, houses on the market, this sort of thing. I don't feel like that's a very good indicator or reflection of what's going on in the market. Yeah, statistics they can be important, but I get my information from talking with other realtors and from my own personal experience. So I know houses are a lot more difficult to sell right now as well. I mean, people can't qualify for mortgages to buy $1 million houses. Although I did have a farmhouse for sale, had 3/4 of an acre in the GTA, and it was on the market for a little bit and it didn't sell, which is, in 9 years, that's the third house that I haven't been able to sell. People were still investing in condos. I mean, condos and attached row townhouses with no yards or anything, over like a farm property, basically in a city with 3/4 of a huge backyard. And it was a 4-bedroom home. Nothing wrong with it. It had some renovations to it. So people want new builds for the most part, and new builds are a good investment, but the property that this house was sitting on was prime location, in my opinion. So when it comes to housing in the future, you're going to be looking at a lot more tenants, a lot more stricter landlords, and a shortage for rentals. People won't be able to afford to buy houses. Everything is going to be rented. For those of you who are into it, you'll own nothing and be happy. But it's crazy. To qualify for a mortgage, you have to be making incredible amounts of money. Check out some of my past videos. I've talked about a lot of things and touched base on, the housing market here in the GTA and Toronto. And I don't sugarcoat anything. I just kind of talk about what's on my mind and how things are going in the real estate market. So that's it for today, I guess. More tenants coming up, and housing shortages for tenants, as if things aren't bad enough, but the cost of living is just too much for Canadians. So that's where we're at right now.